The blazes. Any explorer venturing into the depths of the Nether will no doubt have come face to face with one of these fiery creatures. Blazes are known to attack their victims on sight, but strangely will only go after adventurers that have traveled to the Nether. But a blaze will never attack another mob, even the others that can be found in the Nether. So what gives? Where in the blazes did all these blazes come from? Were they created by something in the fires of the Nether? Or did they come from somewhere else? And what is it that makes them so aggressive to Minecraft players just trying to explore and mine some netherite? Well, players might have a hard time trying to track down any trace of the blaze's true origin. After all, the Nether is a place filled with mystery, with lots of questions about how it came to be, and not a lot of answers. But if you know the right place to look, there is but one scrap of evidence that could maybe point us in the right direction. Think about what you see when you stumble upon a blaze in the Nether. Now, maybe you were too busy defending yourself to notice, but if you're keen-eyed enough, then you might have spotted this critical detail. The blaze doesn't seem to have much in the way of a body. They float around as a cloud of smoke, with blaze rods swirling around them. But what they do have is a head very similar to that of a Minecraft player. What if I told you there was a story about where the blazes came from? It might just be a rumor or an old tale from long ago, but maybe, just maybe, it's the answer we've been looking for. Our story begins a very long time ago in the overworld of Minecraft. Back then, things were pretty similar to what they are now. Every night, undead mobs would rise and seek out the living to attack them. People still lived in small villages trading with each other for resources, but they weren't exactly the most well-defended places. So when the monsters came, villagers had to scrounge up what they could in order to fight back, unless they wanted their homes to be ransacked by skeletons and zombies. Then, as more and more adventurers started traveling the overworld, they would bring with them new and exciting things to trade. Diamonds and emeralds were, of course, what everyone wanted most, these shiny, precious stones mined from deep underground. But there was a resource that to some was more valuable than any rare gem: iron. You see, in the right hands, many realized that metal like iron could be shaped and crafted into some pretty useful things. Iron could be used to make tools that, as it turned out, made it easier to mine. An iron pickaxe made pretty light work of lots of different types of stone, and axes would swiftly chop down trees in no time. And that wasn't all. Metals could be forged into weapons and armor, which made fighting off attacks from undead mobs much easier. Villagers now stood more of a chance at protecting their homes. It was in one of these villages that a young blacksmith began to hone his craft. He had a way with metal. He could smith steel into the sharpest sword you ever saw, like it was the easiest thing in the world to achieve. His weapons were the most well-balanced. His armor protected all who wore it without slowing them down by being too heavy. His tools always lasted long enough to get lots of use out of them. But above all, the blacksmith was kind. "Forgive me for wasting your time. I need a new pickaxe, but I don't have anything I can trade for it." "Not to worry, friend. Here, take this one. I'm sure it will serve you well. And if by chance you find something to repay me for it, then I'll gladly accept." The blacksmith's generosity, as well as his skill, quickly earned him great acclaim. His wares became widely sought after. Traders, travelers, and all manner of adventurers would come and seek him out. Anything that they needed, armor, weapons, tools, he could create it from scratch. People would even bring him ore freshly mined from caves for him to craft into the finest pieces, and right on the spot, he'd take that material and turn it into something useful. Sometimes he was being traded so much for his work that he could afford to just give some away. He had plenty of food, emeralds, and all manner of items people had traded with him. So why keep working? Why not just relax? Well, like we said, the blacksmith was kind. He recognized he had a special skill with metal, and he wanted to use that skill to help people. Unfortunately, there were those out there who sought to take advantage of the blacksmith's kind nature. Not everyone was so honest. Some stole pieces he gave them for free and never paid him back. But there was one even more nefarious than that. One day, the blacksmith was approached by a strange fellow who had traveled a long way to meet him. "Good day to you, blacksmith." "Hello there. Say, I've not seen you in these parts before."
"No, I'm merely a humble traveler, but even out where I reside, I've heard tell of your skill in the forge. I wonder, what do you make of this?"
The traveler produced a book, and in the book was a drawing of something called a blaze rod. To begin, the blacksmith was confused, but definitely intrigued. It was a request unlike any he'd ever received. Usually people wanted swords, axes, helmets, and so on, but he'd never been asked to forge anything like this. Can't say I've ever seen anything like that before, but I like a challenge, and if it helps you out, I'll give it my best shot.
Well, perhaps this will help you get started.
The stranger produced a dazzling, shiny gold bar. The blacksmith had worked with gold before, and it was tricky to say the least. Too much heat, and it would melt like warm butter. And when made into armor and weapons, gold certainly looked pretty, but it was a much softer metal, so not as useful for protecting oneself or dealing damage. The item the strange fellow was asking for needed to be kept hot. It had to stay at the perfect temperature to glow, but not so hot that the gold would melt. It was going to be tricky, but the blacksmith would do his best. Using the gold bar, the blacksmith took to his forge and got to work. He made sure to follow the traveler's book to the letter, wanting this blaze rod to be smithed exactly to the specifications he'd been given. It was intricate, delicate work, very hard to get right, even for a blacksmith as skilled as he was. It took days, maybe even weeks. Just as the blacksmith thought he was about to get it right, the metal would overheat and melt, or it would set too quickly in the wrong shape. He forged on, determined to get it right, even if he had to work without sleep. Then, one night, it happened. The blacksmith stood back from his forge, sweating from the intense heat. After so many grueling hours, he had succeeded. In fact, he'd done better than he ever could have expected. Using just one gold bar, he'd created not one, but 11 of the blaze rods. They were the perfect temperature too. Not too cold that they were solid, but hot enough to glow. But keeping metal hot came with a lot of risks, especially the risk of causing fire. Before he could realize what was happening, the blacksmith started to smell smoke. The blaze rods, they were spreading fire to his precious forge. He grabbed a bucket of water he kept for emergencies, but it was already too late. Desperately trying to escape, the blacksmith found the trapdoor had been blocked from the outside, leaving him trapped as the flames engulfed his forge. When he came to, the blacksmith was surprised to find that he was still alive, or so he thought. Something didn't feel right though. It was an unusual feeling, almost like some part of him was missing. He looked around in dismay at the ruins of his forge, burned to ash with nothing left behind. Even the blaze rods he'd worked so tirelessly to make were gone. The sun was just starting to rise. The fire had burned through the night, and the villagers were emerging to see the resulting damage. Filled with sadness, the blacksmith turned to look at them, only to realize that they were looking at him with frightened expressions on their faces. He went to walk up to them for comfort, feeling like his legs weren't even there beneath him. But as he approached, the villagers panicked and started to run. Something had clearly startled them, but it took the blacksmith a moment to realize what. Then, as he looked down, he saw what had scared them all so much. His body had vanished, replaced with a cloud of black smoke. Floating around him in 3 rings were the blaze rods, all 11 still glowing hot. All that remained of the blacksmith was his head. He had become the very first blaze. In his panicked state, he rushed up to the villagers, trying to ask for help, but he couldn't speak anymore. Flames began to spread from his new form, burning down houses. When they started grabbing buckets of water to try and douse him, the blaze had no choice but to float away to save himself. The blaze managed to get away, but it wasn't long before he noticed someone had followed him. It was the strange traveler, the one who had asked him to forge the blaze rods in the first place. You see, he was no ordinary traveler. He was a wizard. The wizard tricked the poor blacksmith, giving him a bar of gold that had an enchantment placed on it. Now that it had been forged into 10 blaze rods, they all worked together as a magical trap. When the blacksmith had passed, his soul was caught by the blaze rods, and now he'd been turned into a blaze.
Now that my first test has been so successful, nothing can stop me from making an entire army of blaze creatures. Under my command, they will spread their fire across the overworld, and I'll be able to take control of everything.
Hearing this, the blacksmith Blaze was filled with sadness. He'd only ever wanted to help people with his skill at the forge, and this wicked wizard had turned him into a dangerous, fiery monster. His sadness quickly turned to anger, and he attacked the wizard. The Blaze quickly realized that he could launch fireballs when he was enraged, catching the wizard by surprise.
How dare you! You are supposed to be my loyal Blaze soldier. Bah! I have no use for you if you won't follow my orders, but since you like fire so much, I know just the place to send you.
With that, the wizard recited an ancient incantation, and all of a sudden the blaze disappeared. He had been banished into a strange fiery place that he didn't recognize and had no way to escape from, the Nether. The wizard didn't care much. He still thought his first attempt at creating a fire soldier was successful. One of the blaze rods had fallen off the blacksmith blaze when he'd been transported to the Nether, so the wizard carefully lifted it with his magic and set off. He'd use that leftover blaze rod to create even more blazes until he had amassed a whole army. Then, nobody would be able to stop him, or so he thought. Despite his plans, the wizard soon found that when he turned more and more poor souls into blazes, they couldn't be controlled. The flaming spirits longed for their lives back, seeking out anyone nearby for help. So one by one, the wizard was forced to send his creations to the Nether, along with the blacksmith. Nobody knows what happened to that old wizard. Maybe he's still out there in the overworld somewhere, creating more and more blazes and sending them to the Nether where they refuse to be his soldiers. And as for the blacksmith, who knows? Perhaps he's still wandering the Nether, trying to get out. Maybe, if an adventurer was to travel there, he or one of the other blazes might try and beg for help getting back to the overworld. One day, their trapped souls might be able to return to life, or perhaps they'll be trapped as flaming spirits forever.